Hey there, welcome back and thank you for watching. It is so cold outside. It was 12 degrees Fahrenheit this morning. Whew. So we're inside today in front of the wood stove, staying warm. It's super hot right now, even though you don't see flames, a lot of hot coals there. So today I've got 5 snow/cold weather related tractor topics for you, including my DIY snow pusher. I'll give you an update on that and show you that in action. So what are those 5 topics? Fuel and fuel treatment is number 1. Number 2, cold start. Third, we're going to talk about tires. Then we're going to talk about traction, front tire traction. And then we're going to talk about ballast versus no ballast relative to that front tire traction. We'll sort of blend those topics together. The video will be chaptered and I will not do mid-roll ads, so you can just jump ahead to whatever topic you are interested in. Okay, first up is diesel fuel. So if you didn't know, unlike gasoline, diesel fuel does gel in the winter and in really cold temperatures. So you have to either treat it or rely on the fact that you've gotten a winter batch from the gas station that is already treated. My opinion, it's better to just treat your fuel, whether it's summer blend left over from July or a supposed winter blend that you just got, in December. You should treat it. But if you want to learn about the different brands that are out there, go see Project Farm. Todd did a great video on this, but I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. The Cliff Notes version is for anti-gel, Hot Shot was the top performer. Stanadyne and Howes finished 2nd and 3rd, and Power Service was 4th. But he also tested lubricity and corrosion protection of each of these products. So you really just need to go over and watch his video. But the takeaway here, treat your diesel and treat it in the fall before it's cold. It's got to mix up in the can before you use it. All right, next up is cold start. A little less controversial than all of the conversation you see online about diesel fuel treatment and on-road, off-road, and all that stuff. So cold starting, these diesels can be a little rough starting in cold weather. So number 1, I recommend reading the user manual on how to start it in the cold weather and what the cold plugs are and what they're for, and how they sort of preheat. But let me jump here to show you. I just want to show you some comparisons. So I'm going to show you from my prior video, and I'll link that up here at the top of the screen too. I'm going to show you cold start, but cold meaning above freezing. So it was 38 Fahrenheit, I believe, a video I did last season. Okay, so those cold starts were actually pretty good starts. So now I started yesterday morning at 25.6 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and I had the block heater on for about an hour or so. So that's negative 3.6 Celsius if you're tracking. So with the block heater and in that cold weather condition, I did measure a little bit of elevated temperature on the outside of the block, and here's how that cold start went. Okay, so that one was pretty good too, right? I laid on the glow plugs a little bit longer than they recommend, but actually shorter than some people would actually use, and I think it started pretty well. So then later in the day, I went back out and restarted it. The block heater was not on, the battery tender was, but the block heater had not been on all day, so it was 4 o'clock at this point, and the temperature was 25.0 at that time, and here was the start. Okay, so that start was pretty good too. So you would think like, well, it looks like the engine cooled down, but it started better than it did that morning. Clearly the engine inside, something I was not able to measure from the outside laser thermometer, still had a little bit of heat in it, I think, because it really started well. So these things will start in the cold. If you have super cold climate, you should just get a soft plug heater. That's what I think. If you're in the climate that normally you're only starting it maybe at like 20 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, it seems to me like the magnetic block heater works great. So I would go with that. Okay, next topic is tires. What tires should you be using for the snow? So a lot of people use the R14s. Some people have said the industrial tires are terrible in the snow. They're good in the mud. They're terrible in the snow. And that really the best tire in the snow is the turf tire. I think the best tire in the snow is the turf tire. And I'll show you here. Here are the tracks I made in the snow with my turf tires. Look at those things. Like, they are rock solid. Now compare that to the Potenza RE980AS that gets a 7.4, which is a good winter rating. That's on my wife's car. Look at the tracks that thing makes. So they're not really digging. There's not those, perpendicular lines, I guess, as far as really getting the tracks in the snow. So clearly the turf tire, it's basically like a snow tire, is what it looks like to me. So I'm really happy with it. Now I do have the chains for the situation where we get kind of a melt and a nice glaze over. In that case, those turf tires are not going to sink down into hard packed slash icy snow, or just straight up ice, something that's melted to water and refrozen to solid ice. So that's where the rear chains are going to come into play. But I'm a fan of the turf tires. They're good on the grass. They don't tear things up in the summertime, and they seem to have great traction in the snow. And then speaking of traction, what about this DIY snow pusher? How's that thing working? I'll cut to a clip here. So of course I cleared the driveway and stuff, but I didn't have the camera out. So I just did a swipe down through the yard. So the clip you're looking at now is just me pushing snow down through the yard. Of course, I've got the skid shoes on. I took the center shoe out for this clip. And you can see that box on my bucket that I've made is gathering a lot of snow. Pretty much the equivalent of a snow pusher box. And then toward the end of the run here, you can see me turn the wheel and try to steer it, but I can't. There's just too much weight bogging me down in the front, and not enough weight on the tires to give me the traction to turn left, right. So the way you overcome that is you kind of have to pull back on the joystick some and lift that bucket slash snow pusher or plow or whatever you're moving snow with. You gotta lift it up a little bit to get that traction back on the front tires so you can steer. So that's one of the reasons I kind of think maybe a blade isn't as good in the snow, because an angled blade, let me put it that way, because if you've got an angled blade and you're trying to push straight, that angled blade is sort of going to be like nudging you. You're going to have to put the blade straight to go straight. And then if you need to turn, you're probably going to have a problem turning. So post in the comments if you have a snow blade, how well you are able to turn and steer your tractor using the plow blade versus a pusher box or whatever your front snow moving attachment is, post your experience in the comments. But I think you basically just have to lift up on the front end. But what I did do, I said, okay, well, I've got my 350-pound ballast box on the back. So I know that's automatically taking about 300 pounds off my front axle. So what if I take that ballast box off and, rely on that extra 300 pounds on my front axle? Is that enough to give me steering traction? So here's the second pass with that ballast box off. And you can see it's still gathering a ton of snow. And by the way, the sides of that snow pusher are no taller than the bucket, because if they were, all it's going to do is capture it on the sides, and then it's going to still just roll over the back of the bucket. But you can see here toward the end of the run, I tried to turn the steering wheel, and I just don't have good steering unless I lift the bucket. So the takeaway is, you got to lift the bucket, the plow, the whatever's on the front of your tractor to get that steering control back. That's just what it is. That's my experience. If we had bigger tractors, it probably wouldn't be as much of an issue, but with the subcompact, you just don't have enough basically stock weight in the front of the tractor to get that traction. Okay, so that was it. They were my big snow topics I kind of bundled together here. The DIY snow pusher is, I think, working great. I love it. I think the angles on the wood are perfect. I love those two. I was worried that maybe they were too low, or maybe the points were out too far. But I like the points because it gives me visibility as to sort of where the, how the bucket's angled and where they're positioned. And another thing regarding that, and I'll show you some video here, people have said, you don't need a bucket level indicator. There's just no need for that. Just learn to use your tractor. And, that's a fair statement. But let me tell you something. The bucket level indicator speeds things up, because when I dump that load and the bucket's up in the air, I can tilt the bucket back while I'm backing up or repositioning the tractor, and just look at that bucket level indicator, and I'll know my bucket's where it needs to be. And when I drop those loader arms, I'm ready to go. I don't have to drop it on the ground, level it up with my eyes, and then go. So it's a time saver. I really like having that bucket level indicator right there in my face for the snow moving. And then another thing people will say is, you don't need the edge tamers or the skid shoes. Just pitch your bucket back a little bit. And I would say that is totally accurate. You don't need them. But what it does is it takes the guesswork out of it, and it speeds up your operation. Because if you put that bucket down and you happen to be tilted just a little too far forward, those edge tamers are still going to keep your bucket elevated, so you're not pushing along, gathering up stones in your gravel driveway. That's my take on it. I'd love to hear your take in the comments. Okay, so that's all I got for you today. I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, post them in the comments. If you have any questions just about the Massey tractor, I've got a ton of other videos. You can post a comment on that. I can refer you, or just go into my video library and check out what I've got. So take care, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.